present the facilities operation maintenance budget for proposed budget for 2020-2021. I usually like to talk about our budget drivers, which are usually focused around utilities, because those are the things that we don't have much control of, to a certain degree. For electric, we use a host of different vendors. We're using NYPA. We have our solar through our power purchase agreement. We use Con Edison for the ball field lights. We anticipate our costs to increase a little bit, about 2% going forward. We expended about $25,000 so far for NYPA, about 7 months through or so. Utility budget for 2020-2021, we're in approximately $563,000 total, and the breakdown is solar 120, NYPA about 353, and Con Edison about 90. That fluctuates a little bit back and forth, but it all washes back out again. Over this past summer, the district invested in some more LED lighting within the exterior of the high school. Around the whole building, got rid of all the old types of lights that were just not functioning or just weren't efficient, and we went to an LED provider, and they did all that up there, so we enhanced that up there, so that'll help out a long way. Some solar data. The 5 buildings are producing solar power. Solar power accounts for about 40% of the district's needs. Produced about 3,245 megawatt hours since we started back in 2016. The last I thought was kind of an interesting fact, and we didn't really see this until you go through a couple of different iterations of years, because in the beginning we were waning off it. But at Furnace Woods, we run completely on solar during the peak months. So April through December, with optimal, conditions and everything, we're basically running that building on solar. So my NYPA bill it's not a total zero because we still have demand costs that go along with it, but it's basically we're not using really any power, and it's all shifted over to the solar side of it. For Plank, we have another big array there, and June through October, depending on the conditions and things like that, those buildings are zeroed over there too. So it's not always work out that way. We might have a rainy month or something like that, and we get a little bit of fluctuation in there. But that's what I'm seeing in the trends of my bills, so far. Fuel oil, we purchased that off state contract. Cost per gallon has increased.
That's a question on the previous slide.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're talking about, okay, it's all, significant amount provided by solar power, but yet you have a cost for solar power of 120. What is the cost for the solar?
Remember
We still pay them to provide, so we have a PPA with them, power purchase agreement. So those solar panels are producing energy, and we pay the purveyor of that solar. So Terraform, which is the contractor who now oversees that, instead of paying NYPA, we pay Terraform for our power.
Okay, so we don't own the solar power.
No, it's a lease thing, it's a power purchase agreement through them. And one of the reasons why we went through the solar iteration is because the solar is more of a flat line number, whereas through NYPA they can increase or decrease the number depending on what's going on around the world. So if gas prices spike, a couple of years ago we had a polar vortex, they called it, and gas prices all jumped up. So 1 month, let's just say my electrical bill was $35,000, roughly about $35,000. The next month, because they did a correction, my bill went to $70,000 for electric, because they needed to correct based on them paying higher prices for gas to run the turbines to provide electrical power.
Is there any point where we own the solar panels and it becomes a total win-win?
At the end of it, we have the
How long is at the end?
18 years.
Okay, so it's a long time.
Right, correct. We did
You
it
become
basically.
buy it.
You're not going to really want to buy it at the end of 18 years because the technology is going to be outdated. But the reason why we did is to hedge our bet, to keep that like the flattest number we could, instead of seeing these peaks and valleys going back and forth.
Okay.
And with current things with Indian Point, who knows where the prices are going to go, and et cetera. So that was
Thank you.
Were you going to say something?
No.
I answered it. Again, so the oil price by state contract, last year's about 2.2, this year's about 2.05, so it's roughly about the same. And then that fluctuates, like Liz alluded to before, during the course of the year. We see peaks and valleys too. I'll see lower prices, so if I see a lower price, when I'm watching it, we'll buy more oil. stock up the tanks, ride through the other months that maybe it might be a little bit higher, and then we try to go in back and forth with that just to help out with that. Fuel saving measures implemented over the years. Boilers run on economizers. We turn down the boilers during the breaks. Weekends, holidays, etc. We watch for forecasts and plan accordingly. We've done some infrastructure upgrades with some doors and different things like that, so we don't have the same sort of infiltration coming into the buildings. And our head custodians control a lot of that through the building management system. So they go on every day, they see what's going on, temperatures are on in the rooms, and if the rooms are still a little bit high, then we decrease the boilers or shut them off totally and just coast through the rest of the afternoon of that day, or they'll have to turn them on depending if it's too cold. So we kind of keep an eye on that so we can watch what's going on. Propane, we buy that off the state contract. It's decreased a little bit from last year at this time. Budget for propane, we're saying it's going to decrease again next year. Natural gas we get from Con Edison. Gas usage is about the same as last year. Slightly higher than last year. Expected to increase again next year. But again, we watch. We're using that for our boilers and things like that. So we watch that and we try to coast and cut that back and forth as we go. All right, so some of the numbers, salaries went up a little bit, about 4%. Equipment, we did a reduction there of $2,000. Contractual service, we kept the same. Insurances went up 5% for general liability, auto, and fire, I believe. Maintenance contracts, we kept the same. Professional services, we dropped $20,000. That's because some of the things that were not required of us in this year, but will be required in the years going, after. So we'll have to jump it back up again. Materials and supplies, we kept that the same at $280,000. Oil, we dropped that a little bit. Again, prices went up, but we think the way that we're doing things and we're watching things and being very fuel conscious, we think we'll be okay. Electric and gas, we kept that about the same because that number just fluctuates a little. Municipal water, kept that the same. Telephone, we dropped that a little bit, only slightly. Gas propane, again, we dropped that a little. Maintenance projects, we dropped that about $5,000. And our total budget is an increase about $73,000 or 1.57% increase overall.
Any questions?
You had mentioned that you put in more LED lighting outside at the high school. Where do we stand district-wide with switching over to LED?
So
I understand there's a huge savings
So
utilizing LED lighting.
We're actually, Joe and I have been looking into doing possibly another EPC, Energy Performance Contract. And if you remember, we did one about several years back in '09, which is 10 years, 11 years already now. So we did one in '09 and we jumped from T12 lighting to T8 lighting, which is the fluorescent bulbs that are in here. And when we jumped from T12, which is larger size, to the T8s, we saved a lot of electricity doing that. So we are pursuing jumping from the T8s now to LEDs because it's become cost effective to do that.
So we put out an RFP in the fall, maybe in the summer, to identify companies that are state ed approved that do this work. We had a couple. I know of one that came and actually did a tour of the facility to identify where we may have cost savings, and they're developing that plan.
So we're looking to do the same thing. And that would, interestingly enough, that would drop, so our electric would drop into maybe some of those other buildings, and then those would net down to zero. So you would see, again, but you do a lot of these things through funding through an EPC, so you're still on the ticket with the people from the EPC. So, you're paying through one source to get another, but the EPC works because the value outweighs, what you're putting into it. We're looking at all those different things. And with the EPC, there might be some other cost-saving measures as well. So they're not only looking at lighting, they're looking at, every avenue. Is there something more that we can do to enhance, even though we did it years ago, but there might be new technology for the boilers. There might be new technology for windows. There might be new technology for doors where we can, recoup even more costs. So they look at the whole package. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing, water usage. They even look at water usage as a way to economize our water. So if we're using, water in bathrooms, or if we're using an exuberant amount, in the district, in the school, is there a way to put some cost-saving fixtures in so we can lower that as well? So they look at the whole picture.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you.